The story begins with a shy young boy named Lex Luthor flying over a small farming town in Kansas with his father, Lionel Luthor. When they arrive in Smallville, Lex learns that his father is there to buy a farm. While Lionel signs the paperwork, Lex wanders into a nearby cornfield. As he's walking, he suddenly finds a teenage boy tied to a wooden post like a scarecrow, freezing him in fear. Moments later, a meteor blazes across the sky and crashes into the field. Lex tries to run, but the massive dust cloud from the impact knocks him off his feet. At the same time, the people of Smallville are distracted by the fiery object in the sky when pieces of a passing meteor shower begin crashing all around the town. During the chaos, Jonathan Kent and his wife Martha are driving back to their farm when they're caught in a terrible accident. Even though their truck flips over, they both survive. As they climb out of the wreckage, they see a little boy calmly walking toward them. Martha immediately picks him up and begs Jonathan to let them keep him. Since she's always dreamed of becoming a mother but has never been able to have children, Jonathan finally agrees. Meanwhile, Lionel desperately searches for Lex and eventually finds him buried beneath a pile of leaves. But when he sees his son, he's horrified to discover that every strand of Lex's hair has fallen out. More than 10 years later, Clark is now in high school and does everything he can to live like an ordinary teenager without letting anyone discover his incredible powers. Even with all his superhuman abilities, Clark becomes completely awkward whenever Lana Lang is around. Every time he tries to talk to the girl he likes, he turns into a nervous, clumsy teenager. One day, while the other students are trying out for the football team, Clark stays in the bleachers. His parents have always warned him to avoid sports because his abilities could easily expose his secret. Disappointed that he can't enjoy a normal high school life, Clark starts walking home. Along the way, he stops on a bridge to watch the sunset. A few moments later, a truck accidentally drops a large roll of wire onto the road. Right afterward, Lex Luthor's car drives over it, causing all of its tires to blow out. The car crashes through the bridge, hitting Clark before both of them plunge into the river below. Clark isn't hurt at all. Instead, he dives into the water and pulls the trapped driver out of the sinking car. After receiving CPR, Lex regains consciousness and can't believe that the person who saved his life is the same teenager he accidentally hit with his car. Not long after, the police arrive and Jonathan comes to take Clark home. That evening, while looking through a telescope at his neighbor's house, Clark notices that Lana is wearing a necklace with a piece of the meteor that fell years earlier. She believes it brings her good luck. That same night, Jeremy Creek, the young man who had been tied to the post in the cornfield on the day of the meteor shower, visits the garage of one of the boys who humiliated him years ago. Justin immediately recognizes his former classmate, but the instant he reaches out to touch him, he's electrocuted. Even after 12 years, Jeremy has never forgiven the boys who treated him like a scarecrow, and now he's back to get revenge on every one of them. The next morning, as Clark leaves for school, he discovers that someone has delivered him a brand new pickup truck as a thank you gift for saving Lex Luthor's life. Jonathan isn't happy about it. He doesn't want Clark getting used to accepting rewards for doing the right thing because he believes people should help others without expecting anything in return. When Clark realizes he can't keep the truck, he becomes frustrated and says he'd do anything just to be a normal person. Hearing that, Jonathan decides it's finally time to reveal the truth. He explains that Clark came from another planet and even gives him an encrypted message that was supposedly left by his biological parents. Since Clark doesn't believe him, Jonathan takes him to the barn and shows him the spaceship that brought him to Earth. Learning that his parents have hidden the truth about his origins for his entire life leaves Clark furious. The following morning, Clark visits Lex to thank him for the gift, but politely tells him he can't accept the truck. A few hours later, Justin is found barely alive inside his garage. Since he's already the third former Smallville High student to be attacked that week, people begin wondering what's happening. While everyone gathers around, Clark's best friends, Pete and Chloe, notice a man they've never seen before and secretly take his picture to investigate. Before long, they discover that it's Jeremy Creek, a student who attended Smallville High 12 years earlier. He had been in a coma ever since the meteor shower, but only a few days ago he mysteriously disappeared from the state hospital and returned to town. After putting all the clues together, Pete realizes Jeremy is targeting the former football players because they were the ones who tied him up in the cornfield years ago. Chloe then shows Clark and Pete a timeline she spent years putting together, documenting every strange and unexplained event that's happened in Smallville since the meteor shower. Later, while Clark is heading home, Whitney and his friends ambush him. This year, they've chosen Clark to be the school's scarecrow. Ever since Whitney found out Clark liked Lana, he's been looking for a chance to humiliate him. Without realizing that the kryptonite in Lana's necklace weakens Clark, Whitney hangs it around his neck. Then he and the other football players tie Clark to a wooden post in the middle of a cornfield on the night of the spring dance. A few hours later, Jeremy arrives. Instead of helping Clark, he ignores him and goes after the guys who tied him there. Fortunately, Lex Luthor shows up soon afterward and quickly unties Clark. Once he's free, Clark grabs his clothes and rushes away, accidentally leaving Lana's necklace behind. Lex later finds it. Worried that Jeremy is heading for the dance, Clark races to the school and finds him just as he's about to activate the fire sprinklers. Clark first tries to talk him down, but Jeremy attacks with powerful electric blasts. Clark fights back and throws him into a nearby vehicle. Realizing he's facing someone with powers of his own, Jeremy jumps into a vehicle and tries to crush Clark against a wall. What he doesn't realize is that Clark isn't human and his body is nearly indestructible. Clark walks away without a scratch, but Jeremy ends up electrocuting himself. The massive shock damages his brain and causes him to lose all of his memories. After returning home from the spring dance, where she's crowned queen, Lana finds a small box waiting on her bed. When she opens it, dozens of butterflies fly out. After making sure Lana received his gift, Greg heads home, where his mother immediately scolds him after finding the secret videos he recorded of Lana. Besides being obsessed with Lana, Greg is also fascinated by insects and spends hours every day taking care of his collection. When he learns that his mother plans to send him to military school, Greg decides to release all of his insects somewhere safe. But while driving to a nearby park, he slams on the brakes, causing several containers to break open. The insects escape and swarm him. As Greg desperately tries to fight them off, he loses control of the car and crashes into a tree. That night, dozens of different insects bite him. Over the weekend, Clark helps his parents set up their stand to sell organic produce. Greg also stops by and asks Lana if she'll help him with his literature assignment. When Whitney sees Greg talking to his girlfriend, he threatens him, and Greg quietly decides to get even. Later that day, while Whitney is driving home, Greg hides in a tree beside the road and waits. A moment later, Whitney hears something land on the roof of his pickup truck. As he tries to figure out what's happening, he loses control and rolls the vehicle. A few minutes later, the Kent family comes across the wreck. Clark pulls Whitney out of the truck just seconds before it explodes. While Clark takes his injured classmate to the hospital, Greg returns home. When he realizes his mother is about to report him to the police, he traps her with his webbing. Later that night, Greg goes into the bathroom to take a shower. As the water runs, he suddenly begins shedding his skin, as if he's going through some kind of terrifying transformation. Meanwhile, Lex realizes that the necklace he found in the cornfield after the spring dance belongs to Lana. Knowing Clark has feelings for her, he gives him the necklace and suggests that he be the one to return it. When Clark gets home, he opens the lead box to look at the necklace again. The moment he does, he feels something strange happening inside his body. As soon as he closes the box, the feeling disappears. That's when Clark starts to suspect there's something unusual about the pendant. Later that evening, while helping Jonathan in the barn, Clark is suddenly attacked by Greg. As he searches for the mysterious attacker, he sees his father get knocked off the second floor. Clark quickly rushes underneath him and catches Jonathan before he hits the ground, but Greg manages to escape. Remembering the wall of strange cases Chloe has been putting together, Clark realizes Greg may be connected to the many unexplained events that have been happening in Smallville ever since the meteor shower. Wanting to understand what happened to their classmate, Clark asks Chloe for help. She comes up with a theory that meteor fragments have contaminated the soil around Smallville, which means they've also affected the insects living there. If Greg was bitten by dozens of contaminated insects, Chloe believes he could have gone through some kind of mutation. The three friends head to Greg's house to investigate. When they see no one is home, they decide to sneak inside. While searching the house, they find pieces of human skin in the bathtub. They also discover that Greg secretly recorded dozens of videos of Lana. Then, after tearing open one of Greg's giant webs, Clark finds parts of Greg's mother's body hidden inside. Realizing Lana is probably Greg's next target, Clark races to her house to make sure she's safe. But by the time he gets there, it's already too late. Greg has attacked Whitney and kidnapped Lana, taking her deep into the woods. The two boys split up to search for her, and Clark eventually finds Lana inside the old treehouse where he and Greg used to play as children. She's still alive, but Greg refuses to let her leave. Without even realizing that kryptonite weakens Clark, Greg lures him into an abandoned warehouse filled with meteor rocks, giving himself the advantage. To avoid the effects of the kryptonite, Clark hides behind a lead wall and waits for the right moment to strike. During the fight, Greg is thrown into a steel beam before a large dumpster crashes down on top of him. When Clark looks beneath the wreckage, he sees thousands of cockroaches crawling away. Clark immediately rushes back to Lana and is relieved to find her safe with Whitney. Later that night, he decides to return Lana's necklace, but instead of giving it to her himself, he quietly hangs it on her front doorknob. Sometime later, after finishing football practice for the upcoming championship, Coach Walt heads to his private sauna to relax. He heats it using special hot stones that contain kryptonite. A few moments later, Principal Quan arrives with bad news. 7 players on the football team have been caught cheating on a math test, meaning they won't be allowed to compete in the championship. Walt begs the principal to keep everything quiet until after the tournament, but Quan refuses. The moment the principal leaves, Walt explodes with rage and suddenly realizes that his anger has somehow caused a fire to erupt. The next morning, with several players suspended, Walt starts looking for replacements and invites Clark to join the football team, knowing Jonathan was once an outstanding athlete. When Jonathan learns that Clark has made the team, he goes to practice to make sure his son doesn't accidentally reveal his powers. After seeing Clark quietly use his abilities to dominate the field without anyone noticing, Jonathan leaves feeling reassured. Later, while reviewing footage from the previous game, Walt is visited again by Principal Quan. The principal reveals that one of the players admitted Walt gave the team the answers to the math test. He also says he scheduled a meeting with the school board to have the coach permanently suspended. The accusation sends Walt into another fit of anger. Right in front of Quan, the television suddenly bursts into flames. Terrified, the principal runs outside and gets into his car, but moments later, the entire vehicle catches fire. Seeing the burning car, Clark rushes over and pulls Principal Quan out just before it explodes. Although Quan suffers burns and smoke inhalation, he survives thanks to Clark and is taken to the hospital. That night, Coach Walt gathers the 7 players who cheated and demands to know who confessed. Trevor finally admits that he told the principal the truth. Furious, Walt accidentally sets the sprinklers on the football field on fire. Realizing he's losing control, he orders everyone to go home and keep quiet. What he doesn't know is that Chloe secretly witnessed everything and even took pictures. Just as she's about to publish the photos in the school newspaper, Walt catches her by surprise. Her computer suddenly bursts into flames, and the fire quickly spreads through the room. Trapped inside, Chloe cries out for help. Clark hears her screams and races to the school at super speed, pulling her to safety before the flames can reach her. The next day, Clark visits Trevor and convinces him to tell the truth about Coach Walt. When Clark removes the bandage from Trevor's arm, he finds a burn shaped exactly like Walt's hand, confirming his suspicions. Clark immediately confronts the coach inside the sauna and asks him what really happened. While they're talking, Clark inhales smoke containing traces of kryptonite, instantly weakening him. Taking advantage of the situation, Walt locks Clark inside the sauna. Later, during the football game, Martha and Jonathan arrive to watch their son play, but quickly realize Clark never made it onto the field. Fearing something is wrong, Jonathan searches the school until he finds the sauna and breaks the door open to rescue Clark. As the two escape, Walt attacks them with a fire extinguisher. Clark slowly regains his strength and shoves the coach into the locker room. In response, Walt unleashes another massive fire. This time, however, he becomes trapped in the very flames he created. The championship game comes to an abrupt end as firefighters rush to the scene. The following week, Lex Luthor does something that seems impossible for the son of one of the richest businessmen in the country. A man who looks exactly like Lex robs a bank and sprints through the streets carrying a backpack stuffed with cash, shoving anyone who gets in the way. During the escape, he crashes into Clark and throws him through a store window. As Clark gets back to his feet, he suddenly feels a brand new power awakening inside him and quickly realizes the robber isn't actually Lex. Back at home, Tina tells her mother that she transformed herself to look exactly like Lex Luthor and used that disguise to steal the money. Wanting to fix the situation, Rose insists they'll take the bag to the police and claim they found it abandoned. Tina refuses. As the two struggle over the money, an accident leaves Rose unconscious. Instead of calling for help, Tina pretends nothing happened and decides to keep enjoying the $100,000 she stole. Later, Lex visits the Kent family and explains that he was attending a meeting with more than 200 suppliers when the robbery happened. Because of that airtight alibi, the police cleared him as a suspect, and he's now helping them track down whoever impersonated him. After spending the afternoon training, Clark suddenly begins seeing flashes of light. To his surprise, he discovers he can see straight through solid objects, almost like he has X-ray vision. Later, while walking through downtown Smallville, his new vision suddenly activates again. This time, it happens just as he comes face to face with the same person who robbed the bank. Using his new X-ray vision, Clark identifies Tina as the bank robber and starts keeping a close eye on her at school. Before classes begin one morning, Tina approaches Lana, her childhood best friend, and asks for a favor. She explains that her mother is moving to Metropolis but doesn't want to pull her out of school, so she hopes Lana and her Aunt Nell will let her stay with them for a while. Lana hesitates and says she needs to talk to her aunt first before giving an answer, leaving Tina deeply hurt. Upset by the response, Tina puts her books away in her locker and begins coming up with a plan to steal Lana's life. As soon as she walks away, Clark secretly looks inside her locker with his X-ray vision. There he finds the red jacket the fake Lex wore during the bank robbery, along with a huge stash of cash. Clark immediately reports what he found, and later that day the police visit Rose's antique shop to question Tina about the money. Feeling the pressure, Rose promises she'll bring her daughter to the police station to give a statement, but first she asks how the police learned about the cash. When Tina finds out Clark was the one who tipped them off, she transforms into Lana and goes to visit him. After surprising Clark with a kiss, she changes back into her real appearance, pushes him off the second floor of the barn, and escapes. Now that he's witnessed Tina's powers with his own eyes, Clark is convinced the meteor shower caused genetic mutations in several people around Smallville. The next day, he convinces Pete to help him investigate Tina's house. Inside, they discover Rose's body hidden in a closet. Clark also notices Tina has been practicing Lana's signature and realizes she's planning to steal her identity. That night, Lana visits her parents' graves and is surprised when her boyfriend suddenly shows up acting strangely. A moment later, Tina reveals her true identity and attacks her. After taking Lana's kryptonite necklace, Tina locks her inside a coffin and waits for Clark to arrive. With the necklace nearby, Clark is too weak to fight back and is beaten over and over with an iron bar. Just as Tina is about to crush his head, the necklace's effect suddenly stops, allowing Clark to recover his strength. During the fight, Clark demands to know where Lana is. Tina coldly tells him she's already dead. Enraged, Clark throws Tina into a tree, knocking her unconscious. Using his X-ray vision, he quickly finds Lana trapped inside the coffin and rescues her just before she runs out of air. Later that night, Lana receives medical treatment while the police arrest Tina and take her to jail, where she can no longer hurt anyone. A few weeks later, winter arrives, and the students of Smallville High gather in the woods for a party near a frozen lake. While retrieving a ball that rolls onto the ice, Shawn hears it begin to crack beneath him. Before anyone notices, he falls through the ice and disappears beneath the freezing water. Hours later, Shawn somehow crawls out of the lake and stumbles toward the campfire to warm himself up. After absorbing all the heat from the flames, he heads home. But it isn't long before his body starts freezing again. When he visits the school infirmary, the nurse is shocked to discover that his body temperature is far below what any human could survive. As she tries to check him a second time, she suddenly feels all the warmth being drained from her own body. A few seconds later, Shawn gets up, insists he feels fine, and walks out. The following day, he asks Chloe out, but she turns him down because she's busy writing an article for the school newspaper. Instead, Shawn decides to ask Jenna out. That night, he goes to Jenna's house and suddenly barges into the bathroom while she's taking a shower. Startled, Jenna tries to run away, but Shawn corners her and drains every bit of heat from her body. Once he's absorbed enough energy, he leaves. A few hours later, however, he starts freezing all over again. Desperate, Shawn begins calling every girl he's ever dated. After all of them reject him, he finally calls Chloe and invites her out for coffee. That evening, Chloe tells him she'll be working late at the school newspaper office, so Shawn decides to meet her there instead. When Chloe hears a strange noise outside, she goes to investigate and eventually reaches the school's swimming pool. There, she realizes Shawn lured her into a trap. She jumps into the water to escape, but as she swims away, Shawn absorbs all the heat from the heated pool. The water instantly freezes, trapping Chloe's leg beneath the ice. Unable to free herself, she cries out for help. Clark arrives just in time after realizing Jenna had disappeared. He breaks Chloe free, punches Shawn, and the attacker escapes into the streets. Trying to stop another victim, Shawn steps into the road and causes a car to crash. Whitney discovers that his girlfriend injured her ankle in the accident, so he helps her to the nearest house, which happens to be Lex Luthor's mansion. A short time later, Clark arrives and checks the wrecked car for anyone else who might still be trapped. While doing so, he suddenly feels Shawn stealing the heat from his own body. After claiming another victim, Shawn heads toward Lex's mansion, where Jonathan and Martha are attending a business meeting. When the power begins to fail, Martha goes outside to inspect the generator, and unexpectedly comes face to face with Shawn. Fortunately, Clark arrives before Shawn can touch her and attacks him to keep him from entering the mansion. When Shawn threatens his family, Clark loses his temper and hurls him into the nearby lake. Within seconds, the water freezes solid, trapping Shawn inside a massive block of ice forever.